A man decides to divorce to be with his mistress, but he didn't know his wife was a millionaire. When he found out how much she earned, he almost fainted. 100 missed calls to his ex-wife. Before listening to this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Sarah parked her Tesla Model S in the reserved spot of the executive parking lot. Her Christian Louboutin heels echoed across the marble floor of the luxurious commercial building as she walked towards the private elevator. As CEO of TechVision, one of the largest technology companies in the country, she had earned her place in the market through hard work and dedication. As she ascended to the top floor where her office was located, Sarah checked the latest messages. On her cell phone, among important emails and meeting notifications, there were several unanswered messages from Richard, her husband. "We need to talk," said the last one. Sarah sighed, putting the phone back in her Hermes bag. Her 15-year marriage was going through a difficult phase, but she still held hope that they could overcome it together. The day passed in a blur of meetings, presentations, and important decisions. Sarah had just closed a multi-million-dollar contract with an international company, something she had kept secret even from Richard. In fact, there were many things she didn't share with her husband, including the true value of her assets, not out of distrust, but as a matter of privacy and independence that she had always valued. When she arrived home that night, Sarah found Richard sitting in the living room with a serious expression on his face. The heavy atmosphere already indicated that something was wrong. "We need to talk," he said without beating around the bush. Sarah sat on the sofa across from him, trying to maintain the composure that years of business negotiations had taught her. "I'm listening," she replied, though her heart was racing. "I want a divorce," Richard declared, his voice cold and distant. "I met someone else, Julia. She works in the medical laboratory at Central Hospital." Sarah's world seemed to freeze for a moment. All the attempts to save the marriage, the romantic dinners she prepared during the few breaks she had, the trips she planned, everything had been in vain. "How long?" was all she managed to ask. 6 months, he replied, showing no remorse. "Julia makes me feel alive again. You're always busy, always working. We barely see each other." Sarah felt a mixture of anger and disappointment growing inside her. "And all the times I tried to get closer. The dinners I prepared, the trips I suggested." "Too late," Richard cut her off. "I've made my decision. My lawyer will contact you tomorrow." That same night, Sarah had a routine medical appointment scheduled. Even with her world falling apart, she decided to keep the commitment. She needed to distract herself, to do something normal amidst the chaos her personal life had become. At the doctor's office, while waiting for her test results, Sarah reflected on how her life had changed in a matter of hours. The doctor entered, the room with a grave expression, holding a folder with her exams. "Mrs. Sarah, we need to talk about your results," he began, his tone cautious. "We found something that requires immediate attention." Sarah felt her stomach sink. In a single day, her marriage had ended, and now this news. As the doctor explained the details of the diagnosis, she maintained her professional demeanor, making mental notes and asking about the next steps. Upon leaving the doctor's office, Sarah drove to the beach, her favorite place to think. Sitting on the sand, watching the waves break on the shore, she finally allowed the tears to fall. Her cell phone vibrated in her pocket. It was Richard, again probably to discuss divorce details. She ignored the call. At that moment, alone on the beach, Sarah made a decision. She wouldn't allow these circumstances to destroy her. As she had always done in her professional life, she would turn each obstacle into a stepping stone for something greater. Her marriage might have ended, but her story was far from over. As the sun set on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Sarah began to plan her next steps. She didn't know it yet, but this would be just the beginning of a journey that would change not only her life, but the lives of many others. The next morning, Sarah woke up determined to maintain her routine, despite the circumstances. She dressed with her usual care, choosing an executive outfit that always gave her confidence. As she applied her makeup, she observed in the mirror the almost imperceptible signs of the hours she had spent crying. When she arrived at TechVision, her assistant Sandra immediately noticed that something was wrong. After years of working together, they had developed a rapport that went beyond words. Sandra placed a cup of green tea on Sarah's desk and closed the office door, giving her the space she knew she needed. Sarah opened her laptop and began reviewing the morning emails when a bank notification caught her attention. Richard had tried to make a substantial transfer from one of the joint accounts, but the system blocked the operation for exceeding the daily limit. She smiled bitterly. He really had no idea how much money she had. Her phone rang. It was from Central Hospital, confirming her first appointment with the oncologist for the following afternoon. The reality of her diagnosis hit her again like a punch in the stomach. While still processing the information, a new text message arrived. It was from Julia, Richard's mistress. "We need to talk. It's about the tests." Sarah frowned, confused. What could Julia, who worked in the hospital laboratory, want to say about tests? She decided to ignore the message, but something about it deeply bothered her. During lunch, Sarah received a visit from her best friend Beth, who was a lawyer specializing in family law. While sharing a salad in the office, Sarah finally opened up about everything that was happening. "You need to know something," said Beth after hearing the whole story. "Richard was in my office yesterday. He wants to make a retroactive prenuptial agreement." Sarah almost choked on her juice. "What?" "He thinks you're hiding something. He mentioned rumors about $1 million international contract." Sarah couldn't contain an ironic laugh. After 15 years, he finally started paying attention to the business. At that moment, Sandra hurriedly entered the office. "Sarah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think you need to see this." She extended her tablet, showing a social media post. It was a photo of Richard and Julia at a luxurious restaurant, clearly taken the night before. In the caption, Julia announced her new beginning with Richard, mentioning how he had been brave in leaving a toxic relationship. "Toxic," Sarah murmured, feeling her blood boil. 15 years of dedication, of unconditional support when Richard was unemployed, of patience during his midlife crises reduced to toxic. Beth placed her hand over Sarah's. "You need to be strategic now. How much does Richard really know about your finances?" "Practically nothing," Sarah replied. "He always thought I earned well, but he has no idea of my real assets, my investments, the companies I opened. I kept everything separate." "Great," Beth smiled. "We'll use that to our advantage." In the afternoon, Sarah had an important video conference with international investors. During the meeting, her cell phone wouldn't stop vibrating. They were messages from Richard, who had apparently found out about the blocked bank transfer. While presenting the impressive numbers of her company, Sarah maintained her impeccable posture, not letting the turmoil in her personal life show for even a second. The meeting was a success, securing another $1 million contract for TechVision. At the end of the day, alone in her office, Sarah allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. She picked up her cell phone and saw the 47 missed calls from Richard. She also opened Julia's message, which remained there, as disturbing as a pebble. In her shoe. She then decided to do something she hadn't done in a long time. She called her mother. During the conversation, between tears and outpourings, her mother said something that would stay etched in her mind. "Honey, sometimes we need to lose everything to discover who we really are." That night, when she arrived home, Sarah found several of Richard's suitcases in the entrance hall. He was taking his things away. Without exchanging a word, she went up to her room and locked the door. Lying on her king-size bed, now terribly empty, Sarah began to plan her revenge. It wouldn't be something petty or violent. It would be something grand, something that would change lives. Her phone rang once more. It was Julia again. This time, Sarah decided to answer. What she would hear in the next few minutes would completely change the course of her story. "Sarah, I need to tell you something." Julia's voice trembled on the other end of the line. "It's about your tests." There was a deliberate manipulation of the results. The world seemed to stop for an instant. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, her legs shaking. "What do you mean, manipulation?" I switched your tests," Julia confessed, her voice choked with emotion. Richard asked me to do something that would help him in the divorce process, something that would justify him leaving you at a vulnerable moment. But I didn't imagine it would come to this point. Sarah felt a wave of nausea. Are you telling me that you falsified my test to indicate that I was sick? Yes, Julia responded, but I can't live with this guilt anymore. Richard, he's not who I thought he was. Since we started living together, he only talks about your money, your companies. He found out about your international investments and is obsessed. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to process every word. Her analytical executive mind was already starting to connect the dots. The attempts at bank transfers, the sudden interest in her finances, the retroactive prenuptial agreement, it all made sense now. Why are you telling me this now? Sarah asked, her voice controlled. Because I found out I'm pregnant, Julia replied, starting to cry. And when I told Richard, he suggested that I shouldn't have the baby. He said he couldn't have this complication now, not when he was about to get a part of your fortune. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling a mixture of relief and fury. 15. Years of marriage reduced to a conspiracy for money. The man who had promised to love her in sickness and in health had orchestrated a cruel farce about her health. That same night, Sarah convened an emergency meeting with Beth and her legal team. In her penthouse office with the city lights in the background, they began to outline a strategy. We have enough evidence to sue them for moral damages and attempted fraud, Beth explained, organizing the documents on the table. Julia's confession recorded on your phone is our main evidence. Sarah, however, had other plans. I don't want a lawsuit, she declared, surprising everyone. I want something bigger, something that transforms all this negativity into something positive. It was at that moment that the idea of the Phoenix Project began to take shape in her mind. Sarah spent the entire night working on her laptop, developing a business plan for an initiative that would change the lives of underprivileged youth through technology. The next morning, Sarah scheduled a battery of tests at another hospital. The results came in 48 hours. She was completely healthy. The feeling of relief was indescribable, but the betrayal still weighed on her heart. Richard, in turn, continued his desperate attempts at contact. Now that Julia had revealed the truth, he alternated between veiled threats and pleas for forgiveness. In 1 week, he called 200 times. During a meeting with her executive team, Sarah presented her vision for the Phoenix Project. We're going to use 30% of TechVision's profits to create technology centers in underprivileged communities, she explained. We'll offer courses in programming, software development, and digital entrepreneurship. Sandra, who was watching the presentation, noticed something different about her boss. Sarah had always been a strong leader, but now there was a different gleam in her eyes, the gleam of someone who had found a greater purpose. Meanwhile, on social media, the story of the false diagnosis began to leak. Julia, remorseful and pregnant, had shared her version of the facts on a personal blog. The news spread quickly through the medical community, reaching the ears of the hospital board. Sarah observed everything from a distance, focused on her new project. On her desk, a folder contained the first drafts of what would be the largest social technology center in the country. Beside it, an old photo with Richard was replaced by the Phoenix Project logo, a golden bird emerging from circles representing binary codes. The phone rang again. It was Richard for the 100th time that day. This time, however, Sarah smiled. She no longer needed to answer. Her story was just beginning, and it would be much bigger than a betrayal or a lie. It would be a story of transformation, not just for her, but for hundreds of young people whose lives would be changed by the Phoenix Project. The sun had barely risen when Sarah arrived at the first plot of land she had bought for the Phoenix Project. Located in an underprivileged community in the south side of the city, the abandoned space would be transformed into the project's first social technology center. As she walked around the site with her architect, she visualized every detail of the future building. I want glass walls, she explained, gesturing. Total transparency. These young people need to feel part of something grand, not hidden from society. Carlos, the architect, was making frantic notes. And what about the layout of the laboratories? Collaborative spaces, Sarah responded promptly. No individual cubicles. I want them to learn to work as a team from the start. As they discussed the project details, Sandra arrived hurriedly, her tablet in hand. Sarah, you need to see this. It was an article on one of the country's main news portals. Scandal at Central Hospital. Altered exams and conspiracy involving tech sector millionaire. The story had leaked, and now the whole society knew about the manipulation of the exams. The hospital is in crisis, Sandra continued. The board has called a press conference for this afternoon. Sarah remained calm, her eyes fixed on the terrain in front of her. Great. The more attention this story receives, the more visibility the Phoenix project will have when it's launched. Back at the office, Sarah gathered her marketing team. It was time to transform all that negative exposure into something positive. Instead of lawsuits and scandals, she wanted people to talk about social transformation and opportunities. We're going to launch the project next week, she announced. I want a strong campaign on social media, focused on stories of overcoming and renewal. While her team worked on the campaign details, Sarah received an unexpected visit. It was Sophie, a 17-year-old girl who had hacked TechVision's security system 3 months earlier. I came to apologize in person, Sophie said nervously. And also, I wanted to know if that internship offer is still on the table. Sarah smiled, remembering how, instead of suing the girl, she had been impressed by her skills. Actually, I have something better to propose to you. How do you feel about being the first student of the Phoenix project? Sophie's eyes sparkled. In the weeks that followed, she would become not just a student, but one of the main ambassadors of the project, inspiring other young people from her community. Meanwhile, Richard continued his desperate attempts at contact. Now, with the public, scandal. His messages alternated between pleas and veiled threats about business secrets he supposedly knew. He's bluffing, Beth assured during a lunch. I analyzed all the documents. You always kept your most important operations completely separate from him. Sarah nodded, taking a sip of her wine. You know what's ironic? If he had stayed with me out of love, he would have naturally been part of all this. But his greed blinded him. The Phoenix project was quickly taking shape. Architects worked day and night, partner companies offered equipment, and young talents from various communities signed up for the first classes. During a meeting with potential investors, Sarah presented surprising numbers. In 5 years, we aim to train more than 10,000 young programmers. It's not just about code, it's about transforming lives. The presentation was a success. Entrepreneurs and investment funds were practically begging to be part of the project. Sarah, however, maintained a rigorous criterion. Only partners who genuinely shared the social vision would be accepted. At home, alone in her personal office, Sarah found an old photo of her first computer, received when she was 15 years old. That machine had changed her life, opening doors to a world of possibilities. Now she would do the same for thousands of young people. Her phone vibrated, another message from Richard. This time, however, it was different. He had discovered about the Phoenix project and its financial potential. We can rebuild everything, the message said. We've always been a great team. Sarah just smiled, deleting the message without responding. On her computer monitor, the Phoenix project logo shone brightly, a golden bird emerging from binary codes, perfectly symbolizing her own transformation. The first center of the Phoenix project was about to be inaugurated. Sarah observed the final adjustments being made to the modern architecture building, with its glass walls reflecting the morning sun. Dozens of state-of-the-art computers were already installed, robotics laboratories set up, and classrooms equipped with cutting-edge technology. Sophie, the project's first student, now led a group of young monitors. We already have more than 1,000 registrations just for the first class, she informed, showing the spreadsheets on her tablet. And that's without having made any official announcement yet. The news about the project had spread organically through the communities, creating a network of hope and opportunities. Sarah smiled, remembering how a betrayal had transformed into something so much bigger than herself. However, not everything was smooth sailing. The rapid expansion brought with it new problems. During a video conference with Sophie and Julia, Sarah was informed of a concerning situation. "We have reports of some franchises that are charging students," Sophie explained, her voice tense. "This goes against everything the Phoenix Project stands for." Sarah felt a pang of disappointment. "We need to act quickly, schedule an emergency meeting with all regional leaders." While dealing with professional challenges, Sarah was also facing personal dilemmas. The constant travel schedule was starting to weigh on her family life. Hikari, although always happy to travel with her parents, was beginning to miss a more stable routine. One night, after putting Hikari to bed in yet another hotel room, Sarah found Ethan on the balcony, looking pensively at the illuminated city. "Maybe it's time to rethink some things," Ethan said softly. Sarah felt a lump in her throat. She knew exactly what he was talking about. The balance between career and family, always delicate, was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. Before they could deepen the conversation, Sarah's phone rang. It was Beth with urgent news. "Sarah, we have a problem," the lawyer said, her voice tense. "A group of investors is questioning the financial structure of the Phoenix Global Foundation. They allege lack of transparency." Sarah's heart raced. After all they had built, facing accusations of financial mismanagement was a hard blow. She spent the night awake, reviewing documents and preparing a defense strategy. The next morning during breakfast, Hikari noticed the concern on her mother's face. "Mommy sad?" asked the little one, her big eyes full of concern. Sarah hugged her daughter, feeling a wave of emotion. "No, sweetie. Mommy's just thinking about how to make the world better for you." At that moment, looking at Hikari and Ethan, Sarah had an epiphany. The true legacy of the Phoenix Project wasn't just in the programs or numbers, but in the transformed lives and strengthened families. With renewed determination, Sarah called an emergency meeting with the entire global team of the Phoenix Project. It was time to go back to the roots, to reaffirm the values that had started it all. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sarah began, her voice firm despite the fatigue, "we face challenges, but we also have a unique opportunity. Let's use this crisis to strengthen our mission, to be even more transparent and effective." In the days that followed, Sarah led a complete restructuring of the Phoenix Global Foundation. New audit systems were implemented, partnerships were re-evaluated, and an independent advisory board was established to oversee all operations. In parallel, she made a difficult but necessary personal decision. She reduced her international travel, delegating more responsibilities to the local team in each country. This meant less direct control, but also more time with Hikari and Ethan. Weeks later, during a global press conference, Sarah presented the changes and openly answered all questions about the foundation's finances. Her honesty and transparency not only calmed investors, but also strengthened public trust in the Phoenix Project. That night, back in their apartment in New York, Sarah, Ethan, and Hikari had dinner together, something that hadn't happened frequently in recent months. You know," said Sarah, watching Hikari play with her food, "I think I finally understood something important. True transformation begins at home. If we want to change the world, we first need to take care of those closest to us." Ethan smiled, taking her hand. "That's why you're such an incredible leader, Sarah. You never stop learning and evolving." As night fell over New York, Sarah felt a peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. The challenges would continue to come, she knew, but now she was more prepared than ever to face them. With her family by her side and a clear vision of her purpose, she was ready to take the Phoenix Project and herself to new heights. The Phoenix, after all, not only rises from the ashes, but continues to evolve, adapting to each new challenge and growing, stronger with each obstacle overcome. The sun was setting over New York City, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. Sarah was sitting in her home office, reviewing the latest reports from the Phoenix Project. Hikari, now 5 years old, was quietly playing on the carpet. Beside her, drawing what appeared to be a phoenix with colored pencils. The phone rang, interrupting the quiet moment. It was Sophie. "Sarah, we have a situation," Sophie said, her voice tense. "The government of Country X is threatening to shut down our centers. They claim we're promoting Western ideas and destabilizing the social order." Sarah sighed deeply. It wasn't the first time the Phoenix Project had faced political resistance, but never on such a large scale. I understand. Schedule a video conference with the local team and our international legal consultants for tomorrow morning, Sarah responded, maintaining her calm despite the growing concern. At that moment, Ethan entered the office, immediately noticing Sarah's worried expression. "More problems?" he asked softly. Sarah nodded, briefly explaining the situation. Ethan listened attentively, his face a mixture of concern and determination. "You know," he said after a moment of reflection, "maybe it's time we consider a different approach. Instead of fighting against governments, we could try to work with them." Ethan's suggestion planted a seed in Sarah's mind. In the weeks that followed, she led a series of delicate negotiations, not just with the government of Country X, but with several others where the Phoenix Project operated. The result was the creation of the Phoenix Partnership Program, an initiative that adapted the project's curriculum to include elements of local culture and values while maintaining its core of technological education and entrepreneurship. This new approach not only resolved the immediate crisis, but opened doors for expansions in countries that were previously skeptical about the project. However, professional success came at a personal cost. The long working hours and constant travel began to weigh on Sarah's family life. Hikari, now in school, often asked why her mother couldn't be present at important events like other mothers. One night, after missing Hikari's ballet recital due to an emergency meeting, Sarah found Ethan on the balcony of their apartment. "We need to talk," Ethan said, his voice gentle but firm. Sarah felt her heart tighten. She knew what was coming. "Doctor, I know the Phoenix Project is important," Ethan continued, "but our family is too. Hikari needs you. I need you." Ethan's words hit Sarah like lightning. She had always believed she was doing all this for her family, to create a better world for Hikari. But in the process, she was missing precious moments that would never come back. "What do you suggest?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "Maybe it's time to take a step back," Ethan replied. "You've built something amazing, Sarah. Now perhaps it's time to let others lead, while you focus on being not just a global leader, but also a present mother." Ethan's words resonated deeply with Sarah. In the days that followed, she reflected intensely on her role in the Phoenix Project and in her own life. Finally, after much deliberation, Sarah made a decision. She called a meeting with the entire global team of the Phoenix Project. "Friends," she began, her voice laden with emotion, "over the last few years we've built something extraordinary together. The Phoenix Project has transformed lives around the world, but the time has come for a new transformation." Sarah announced that she would be stepping back from the daily leadership of the project, assuming a more strategic role on the board of directors. Sophie would be promoted to global CEO, with Julia as her vice president. "This is not a goodbye," Sarah assured. "It's the beginning of a new chapter for the Phoenix Project and for me." In the months that followed, Sarah rediscovered the joy of small things, helping Hikari with homework, having family dinners without interruptions, spending entire weekends without looking at work emails. One day, while playing with Hikari in the park, Sarah received a notification on her phone. The Phoenix Project had just reached the milestone of 10 million lives transformed globally. Looking at her daughter laughing happily on the swing, Sarah felt a wave of emotion. She realized that her greatest achievement wasn't in the impressive numbers or awards won, but in the ability to inspire others to continue her legacy. The Phoenix, she understood, doesn't need to always be at the center of the fire to shine. Sometimes its greatest power is in igniting the flame in others, allowing a new generation of leaders to take flight. With a smile on her face and her heart full of gratitude, Sarah pushed the swing once more, savoring every moment with her daughter. The future, she knew, was in good hands, both in the Phoenix Project and in her own family. 10 years had passed since Sarah made the decision to step away from the daily leadership of the Phoenix Project. Time had brought changes, growth, and a new perspective on what really mattered. On a sunny Saturday morning, Sarah watched Hikari, now 15, working on her laptop on the balcony. The teenager was developing an app to help young people identify and combat online bullying, a project she had started at the latest Phoenix Project hackathon. "How's the app coming along, sweetie?" Sarah asked, bringing a tray with breakfast. Hikari smiled, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "I'm almost finished with the prototype, Mom. Sophie said that if it's good, we can implement it in all the Phoenix centers." Sarah felt a wave of pride and nostalgia. Seeing her daughter not just following in her footsteps but carving her own path was a surreal experience. That afternoon, Sarah had a scheduled video conference with Sophie and Julia. Even though she had stepped away from daily operations, she still actively participated in the board of directors and strategic decisions. "Sarah, we have big news," Sophie announced, barely containing her excitement. "The UN wants to adopt the Phoenix Project model as the basis for a global technology education program." Julia added, "And that's not all. Several governments are asking for our help to reshape their educational systems." Sarah listened attentively, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. The project she had started so many years ago had grown beyond her most ambitious dreams. "That's incredible, girls," Sarah responded, smiling. "You two have done a phenomenal job taking the Phoenix Project to new heights." After the call, Sarah reflected on how things had changed. Sophie, once a young hacker, was now a respected global leader. Julia, who started as an adversary, had become an invaluable partner and a dear friend. That evening during family dinner, Ethan brought up an unexpected topic. "Sarah, remember that idea we had years ago about writing a book telling the story of the Phoenix Project?" Sarah nodded, vaguely recalling the conversation. "Well," Ethan continued, "I think now is the perfect time. With the 20th anniversary of the project approaching, your story could inspire a new generation of social entrepreneurs." Ethan's suggestion resonated deeply with Sarah. In the months that followed, she dedicated herself to reliving her memories, revisiting the ups and downs of her journey. The writing process was therapeutic and revealing. While working on the book, Sarah received an unexpected call. It was Beth, her former lawyer and friend. "Sarah, you won't believe it," Beth said, her voice trembling with emotion. "They found a letter from Richard. Apparently he wrote it shortly before you know." Sarah's heart raced. Even after so many years, the mention of Richard's name still evoked a complex mixture of emotions. "What did the letter say?" Sarah asked hesitantly. "He asked for forgiveness," Beth responded softly. "To you, to Julia, to everyone he hurt. And he left a substantial donation to the Phoenix Project, with the condition that it be used to help ex-inmates reintegrate into society through technological education." Sarah was silent for a moment, absorbing the information. It was as if the last chapter of an old story was finally being written. In the weeks that followed, Sarah worked with Sophie and Julia to create the Renaissance program, an initiative dedicated to giving a second chance to ex-inmates through education and entrepreneurship. The launch of Sarah's book coincided with the celebration of the 20th anniversary of the Phoenix Project. At a globally broadcast live event, Sarah took the stage, accompanied by Ethan, Hikari, Sophie, and Julia. 20 years ago, Sarah began, her voice laden with emotion. "I was at rock bottom, betrayed and desperate. Today I stand before you not just as the founder of the Phoenix Project, but as someone who has witnessed the transformative power of resilience and compassion." Looking at the audience, Sarah saw faces of all ages and backgrounds. Former students who were now CEOs, mothers who had become programmers, young people who dreamed of changing the world through technology. "The Phoenix Project was never about a single person," she continued. "It was and always will be about the incredible potential that exists in each of us, about the ability to rise from the ashes, no matter how difficult the circumstances." As she concluded her speech, Sarah felt a deep sense of accomplishment and peace. The legacy she had built was not just the Phoenix Project, but the countless lives that had been transformed, the dreams that had been realized. That night back home, Sarah found Hikari working on her app. "Mom," Hikari said, looking at her with determination, "one day, I want to create something as impactful as the Phoenix Project." Sarah smiled, hugging her daughter. "Sweetie, you're already doing that. Every small action we take to make the world better is a flame that can ignite a fire of change. As New York City sparkled outside, Sarah reflected on her journey. From the pain of divorce to global recognition, from lies and betrayals to the creation of a worldwide transformation movement, each challenge, each obstacle, had been an opportunity for growth and renewal. The phoenix, she realized, was not just a symbol of rebirth, but of constant evolution. And as she looked to the future, Sarah knew that her journey, and the journey of the Phoenix Project, was far from over. New challenges would come, new opportunities would arise, and with them, the chance to continue growing, learning, and transforming lives. The fire of the phoenix, after all, never completely goes out. It only renews itself, ready to illuminate the path to a brighter future. The sun was rising over New York City, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange. Sarah, now 60 years old, watched the city wake up from her penthouse. 25 years had passed since the foundation of the Phoenix Project, and the world was a very different place. Hikari, at 20, was about to graduate in computer science and social entrepreneurship at university. Her anti-bullying app, Started, as a school project, was now used in schools around the world, having impacted millions of young people. Sarah's phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Sophie. "Sarah, you need to turn on the TV now," Sophie said, her voice trembling with emotion. International news channel. Intrigued, Sarah turned on the television. Her eyes widened as she saw the headline, "Phoenix Project nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for the second time in 25 years. "This is incredible," Sarah murmured, feeling a wave of emotions. "It's not just that," Sophie continued. "The nomination isn't just for the project, but for the entire movement we've created. They're calling it the Phoenix Revolution, how we've transformed education and social entrepreneurship globally." In the days that followed, Sarah found herself at the center of a media storm. Journalists from around the world wanted interviews. Documentarians asked for permission to tell the story of the Phoenix Project, and world leaders sent messages of congratulations. Amidst all this commotion, Sarah received an unexpected visit. It was Julia, now a respected global leader in women's education. "Sarah," Julia said, her eyes shining with unshed tears, "do you remember that day, so many years ago, when you invited me to see the first Phoenix Project Center?" Sarah nodded, vividly remembering that crucial moment. "That day changed my life," Julia continued. "You could have hated me, could have excluded me, but instead, you showed me a path of redemption and purpose. And look at us now." The two women embraced, their stories intertwined in ways they could never have imagined. As preparations for the Nobel ceremony progressed, Sarah decided it was time to take another step forward. She called a meeting with the entire global leadership of the Phoenix Project. "Friends," she began, looking at the familiar faces and the new leaders who had joined over the years, "it's time for another transformation." Sarah announced her plan to create Phoenix University, a global, fully online and free higher education institution focused on technology, social entrepreneurship, and sustainable development. "Imagine," she said, her eyes shining with enthusiasm, "a place where anyone, anywhere in the world can have access to cutting-edge education without financial or geographical barriers." The idea was met with unanimous enthusiasm. In the months that followed, teams around the world worked tirelessly to make this vision a reality. On the eve of the Nobel ceremony, Sarah was walking along Central Park with Ethan. The sun was setting, painting the sky with the colors of the phoenix, red, orange, and gold. "You know," Ethan said, holding Sarah's hand, "when we met, I could never have imagined where this journey would take us." Sarah smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude. "It's true. Every challenge, every obstacle brought us here." At that moment, Sarah's phone vibrated. It was a message from Hikari. "Mom, I just got accepted into the AI Ethics Masters program at MIT. Can't wait to use what I've learned to expand the Phoenix Project." Sarah showed the message to Ethan, her eyes shining with pride. "Look," she said, "the legacy continues." The next morning, As she prepared for the Nobel ceremony, Sarah reflected on her journey. From the pain of divorce to global recognition, from lies and betrayals to the creation of a movement that transformed millions of lives. She thought about Richard, about how even the ashes of his tragedy had been transformed into something positive through the Renaissance program. She thought about Sophie, about Julia, about all those who had been part of this incredible journey. Looking at herself in the mirror, Sarah saw not only the global leader she had become, but also the woman who had been reborn so many times, always stronger, always wiser. The true phoenix, she murmured to herself, is not a project or an organization. It's the spirit of renewal and hope that lives in each of us. 10 years had passed since the Phoenix Project's second Nobel Peace Prize win. The world had changed drastically, and Phoenix University, Sarah's dream, was now a global reality with millions of students. Sarah, at 70, watched the sunset over New York City from the balcony of her apartment. Her hair, now completely white, shimmered with the golden reflection of the sky. Ethan, sitting beside her, held her hand with the same tenderness as always. "Can you believe everything that's happened, Sarah?" Ethan asked, his voice soft and reflective. Before Sarah could respond, her tablet made a sound. It was a video call from Hikari, now 30 and head of ethical AI research at Phoenix University. "Mom, Dad, you won't believe it," Hikari exclaimed, her face radiant with excitement. "We've just made an incredible discovery in the lab. We've developed an AI algorithm that can predict and prevent humanitarian crises with 95% accuracy." Sarah smiled, feeling a wave of pride and hope. "That's wonderful, sweetie. I can't wait to hear more." After ending the call, Sarah turned to Ethan, her eyes shining with an idea. "You know, I think it's time we take the next step. The world is changing so fast and the Phoenix Project needs to evolve with it." Ethan nodded, well acquainted with that determined look in his wife's eyes. "What do you have in mind?" Sarah smiled, her entrepreneurial spirit still burning strong after so many years. "I think it's time we create the Interplanetary Phoenix Initiative. With the colonization of Mars becoming a reality, we need to ensure that the principles of equal education and social entrepreneurship extend beyond Earth." Ethan chuckled softly, but his eyes showed support and admiration. "Only you would think of expanding an educational project to another planet, Sarah." The year was 2060, and the first human colony on Mars was celebrating its 5th anniversary. In the command center of Ares base, Hikari, now 35, adjusted the controls for an interplanetary transmission. On the other side of the screen, Sarah, at 75, watched with misty eyes as the Phoenix logo floated against the red Martian sky. "Mom," Hikari said, her voice slightly distorted by the cosmic distance, "the first Phoenix Education Center on Mars is officially operational. We have 50 colonists enrolled in the initial program." Sarah smiled, feeling a mixture of pride and admiration. "It's incredible, sweetheart. Your father would be so proud to see this." The mention of Ethan, who had passed away 2 years ago, brought a pang of sadness. But Sarah knew that his legacy lived on through the work they continued to do. Back on Earth, Sarah was leading a meeting of the global board of the Phoenix Foundation. The room was filled with familiar faces and new ones, all united by the same purpose that had guided the project for decades. "With the expansion to Mars," Sarah began, her voice firm despite her age, "we face new challenges and opportunities. How do we ensure that the Phoenix principles adapt to a completely new environment?" Sophie, now a respected global leader in her 50s, raised her hand. "We're already working on a curriculum adapted to the specific needs of life on Mars. Sustainability, space psychology, advanced engineering, all integrated with our social entrepreneurship approach." Julia, who now led the Foundation's mental health programs, added, "We're also developing specific psychological support protocols for the challenges of isolation and the Martian environment." As the discussion progressed, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. From a project born out of personal pain, Phoenix had transformed into an interplanetary force for change and hope. After the meeting, Sarah received a surprise visit. It was Clara, Richard's ex-girlfriend, now a 70-year-old woman and director of the Renaissance program for ex-inmates. "Sarah," Clara said, her eyes shining with emotion. "We've just received the results of the long-term study. The Renaissance program has reduced criminal recidivism by 85% globally. We're literally changing the course of millions of lives." Sarah hugged Clara, feeling the weight and joy of decades of hard work and dedication. "Richard would be proud," she said softly, "of all of us." That night, alone in her apartment, Sarah looked at the stars. The Phoenix legacy now extended beyond Earth, touching lives on 2 worlds, and yet she knew there was more to be done. Taking her tablet, Sarah began to sketch ideas for the next big step, an educational exchange program between Earth and Mars. As she worked, she felt that familiar sense of purpose and hope that had guided her throughout her life. The Phoenix fire, she realized, knew no limits, not even those of outer space. With each new challenge, with each new frontier, it only burned stronger, illuminating the path to a future where education and opportunity knew no barriers, terrestrial or cosmic. The year was 2065, and Sarah, at 80, was observing the blue Earth through the window of the orbital space station. After decades of leading the Phoenix project from the Earth's surface, she finally had the opportunity to see her work literally reach the stars. The space station, a collaboration between the Phoenix Foundation and various international space agencies, was the project's newest venture, the Orbital Phoenix University, a research and education center floating 400 kilometers above the Earth's surface. "Amazing, isn't it?" said a familiar voice. It was Sophie, now 55, floating beside Sarah. Who would have thought that that small classroom in the slums would one day lead us here? Sarah smiled, her eyes reflecting the glow of the planet below. "It's a reminder that there are no limits to what we can achieve when we believe in people's potential." At that moment, a transmission from Mars interrupted their thoughts. It was Hikari, now 40, and governor of the Martian colony. "Mom, Sophie, you need to see this," Hikari said, her face a mixture of excitement and concern. "Our sensors have detected something strange. It could be a sign of extraterrestrial life." The announcement sent shockwaves through the space station and back to Earth. In the days that followed, the world anxiously awaited more information, while scientists and researchers worked tirelessly to decipher the mysterious signal. Sarah, even amidst the excitement, saw a unique opportunity. "If there really is life out there," she said during an emergency meeting of the Phoenix Foundation board, "we need to be prepared for a new kind of cultural and educational exchange, a truly interstellar one." Sarah's idea inspired a new wave of innovation. Teams across the solar system, on Earth, on the orbital station, on Mars, and even on lunar bases, began developing protocols and curricula for possible extraterrestrial contact. Meanwhile, on Earth, Julia led an effort to prepare humanity psychologically for this new reality. "It's not just about technology or science," she explained in a global speech. "It's about expanding our understanding of what it means to be part of a larger universe." Weeks passed, and finally confirmation came. The signal was indeed of non-human intelligent origin. The news shook the world, but thanks to the efforts of the Phoenix Foundation, there was a sense of hope and possibility, rather than fear. On a quiet night on the space station, Sarah floated alone, observing the stars. She thought about her journey, from the ashes of a failed marriage to the threshold of a new chapter for humanity. "You always knew we'd get here, didn't you?" said a soft voice behind her. Sarah turned and for a moment thought she saw Ethan, but it was just a reflection in the window. Smiling to herself, Sarah murmured, "No, my love, I just knew we'd never stop trying." At that moment, as the Earth silently rotated below and the stars shone with promises of new worlds and new possibilities, Sarah felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The Phoenix Project had started as a spark of hope in a moment of personal despair. Now it was a flame that illuminated the path to humanity's future, not just on Earth, but across the stars. The legacy of the Phoenix, she realized, wasn't just about rising from the ashes, but about continuing to evolve, to grow, and to expand. It was about igniting the flame of knowledge and understanding in every heart, on every world, and perhaps now in every form of intelligent life they might encounter. With a serene smile, Sarah closed her eyes, feeling at peace. The future was vast and unknown, but she knew that wherever humanity went, the spirit of the phoenix would guide them, always being reborn, always renewing itself, always reaching for new horizons. The year was 2070, and Sarah, at 85, was back on Earth in her apartment in New York City. The walls, once covered with photos and awards, now displayed three-dimensional holograms of landmark moments in the history of the Phoenix Project, from the first improvised classroom to the recent discovery of extraterrestrial life. Sarah looked out the window at the city, the skyscrapers now interspersed with vertical gardens and landing platforms for flying vehicles. The world had changed so much, and she felt grateful to have been part of that transformation. A soft beep announced a call. It was a multi-planetary video conference. Hikari from Mars, Sophie from the space station, and Julia from the UN headquarters in New York. "Mum," Hikari began, her face showing a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "The extraterrestrials have responded to our signal. They're willing to meet." Sarah felt her heart race. Even after so many years and so many achievements, the universe still found ways to surprise her. "It's a crucial moment for humanity," Sophie said, "and we want you to lead the first contact." "Team?" Sarah was silent for a moment, feeling the weight of the responsibility. "I don't know if I'm the right person for this," she finally said. "Maybe it's time to pass the baton to the next generation?" Julia smiled gently. "Sarah, you've always been more than just the founder of the Phoenix Project. You're a symbol of resilience, of transformation. There's no one better to represent humanity at this historic moment." After much reflection, Sarah accepted the mission. In the months that followed, she led a global team in preparation for the encounter. The Phoenix University curriculum was adapted to include xenobiology and interstellar diplomacy. The Phoenix Foundation worked tirelessly to promote global unity in the face of this new chapter in human history. Finally, the day of the encounter arrived. An extraterrestrial ship entered Earth's orbit, and a delegation was invited aboard. Sarah, accompanied by Hikari, Sophie, and a diverse team of scientists and diplomats, embarked on the mission. As the Earthship approached the alien vessel, Sarah looked out the window at the vast space. She thought about her journey, from the ashes of a failed marriage to this monumental moment. "Grandma," said a soft voice. It was Yuki, Hikari's 10-year-old daughter, who had insisted on being part of the mission. "Are you nervous?" Sarah smiled, taking her great-granddaughter's hand. "A little. But you know, Yuki, every new beginning is a bit scary. The important thing is to remember why we're here." When the doors of the alien ship opened, revealing creatures of a beauty and strangeness beyond human imagination, Sarah felt a wave of emotion. This wasn't just the culmination of her life or the Phoenix Project, it was the beginning of a new chapter for all of humanity. With Yuki by her side, Sarah stepped forward, ready to make first contact. At that moment, she understood that the true legacy of the Phoenix wasn't just about education or technology. It was about the courage to face the unknown, the wisdom to learn from every experience, and the strength to keep evolving, no matter the challenges. As the first words of greeting were exchanged between the two species, Sarah felt a deep sense of accomplishment and hope. The Phoenix fire, which had started as a small flame in her heart so many years ago, now illuminated the path to the stars, uniting worlds and expanding the horizons of understanding and compassion. And so, on the vast stage of the cosmos, the Phoenix story entered its most exciting chapter. Not an end, but a new and glorious beginning.